Okay, let's dive right into this. When we think about global superpowers, we usually picture massive economies, incredible technological breakthroughs, and some really complex geopolitical maneuvering. But what if the biggest deciding factor in a nation's success was actually determined millions of years before the very first city was even built? Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're exploring how natural boundaries, rivers, and resource wealth literally dictate global power dominance.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the geographic power lottery, using the United States as a pretty perfect case study, specifically looking at the Mississippi money machine and the two-ocean fortress. Then, we'll zoom out to objectively analyze the geographic flaws of global rivals, before calculating the ultimate financial bottom line.
All right, part one, the geographic power lottery. Because the truth is, a superpower's success isn't just about having good policy. It's heavily dependent on the physical hand they're dealt by nature.
And that brings us to geographical determinism. Now, you're probably familiar with the concept. It's basically the reality that a nation's physical geography, its natural boundaries, and its resources act as the primary engine for its political and economic power. When we apply this lens to the United States, we see a nation possessing a nearly perfect combination of these natural traits, creating a geographic layout that heavily insulates it from vulnerabilities.
Moving on to part two, the Mississippi money machine. To really see this geographic advantage in action, we're shifting our focus right into the American Midwest to reveal a massive economic engine that's essentially hiding in plain sight. 14,000 miles. That is how much interconnected waterway exists in the Mississippi River system. It's a sprawling network of deep, naturally navigable water. But here's the real geographic lottery win. It happens to overlay perfectly with some of the most prime, fertile agricultural land on the entire planet. This isn't just a geographical quirk, it's a built-in engine for extremely cheap crop distribution.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer scale of the cost efficiency. If you look at the base cost of moving cargo by water, moving that exact same cargo by rail is going to cost you 10 times as much. Moving it by truck, 30 times as much. Having a massive, ready-made water transit system running straight through the heart of your agricultural center is an unparalleled, totally unreproducible economic advantage.
So here's how this geographic cause and effect relationship actually plays out over generations. Because you have incredibly cheap transport naturally carved right into the land, farmers and producers keep much higher profit margins. Over decades, those margins compound into massive surplus capital. And what does a developing nation do with all that extra cash? It pours it directly into national industrialization. The geography literally funds the infrastructure.
Let's move to part three and see how this builds. The two-ocean fortress. We've seen the internal economic engine, but what about external threats and physical borders?
Now I want you to really think about this for a second. How does geography impact military spending? It's so easy to think of national defense purely in terms of strategy and policy, right? But every single physical border a country has is a border that requires tax dollars, troops, and strategic planning to defend.
Well, think about the geographic layout of the U.S. It acts essentially like one massive island. It's surrounded by vast physical barriers, the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and flanked by benign neighbors in Canada and Mexico. That means there's no existential military threat sitting right on its borders. Because the U.S. doesn't have to spend a fortune heavily fortifying domestic land borders, it can focus its immense resources and military spending outward, prioritizing naval power and foreign power projection to secure global trade.
Which brings us to part four, geographic flaws of rivals. To truly grasp this concept of geographical determinism, we need to take a strictly analytical, global perspective and look at the physical realities faced by other major powers.
And this brilliantly illustrates the delicate balance of global geography. Every single major competitor has immense strategic advantages, for sure, but they also possess critical geographic Achilles heels when compared to the dual ocean access and cheap river transport of the U.S. Let's break these down objectively, one by one.
Starting with China, geographically speaking, they benefit from a massive coastline and formidable protection from the Himalayas and Central Asian deserts. Functionally, however, their naval access to the open Pacific is heavily bottlenecked by the first island chain. Furthermore, unlike the Mississippi system we talked about, China lacks deeply navigable rivers that seamlessly connect its entire vast interior, and that severely complicates their internal transport.
Then we have Russia. They possess a truly colossal landmass containing absolutely vast reserves of timber, minerals, and fossil fuels. But that massive size comes with a major defensive burden. They share 14 land borders with other nations. Additionally, Despite their sheer size, they're effectively landlocked in the north by ice, completely lacking year-round reliable ice-free ports for global naval and trade access.
Next up is India. Now, India enjoys incredible dominance over the central Indian Ocean, and they're incredibly well protected to the north by the massive mountain barrier of the Himalayas. But that protection is kind of a double-edged sword. Geographically, they are completely blocked from overland land-based trade routes to the west by Pakistan and to the north by those very same mountains.
So, how does all this terrain, water, and bordering actually translate into dollars and cents? Let's look at Part 5, the financial bottom line, where we examine the practical receipts of these geographic layouts.
So the crucial point here is that geography fundamentally dictates your infrastructure return on investment. In the U.S., massive stretches of flat, unbroken terrain drastically lower the physical and financial cost of laying down transcontinental roads, railways, and pipelines. When you combine that easily built infrastructure with a geography that naturally provides self-sufficiency in agriculture, shale oil, and natural gas, you achieve absolute resource sovereignty. It creates an incredible financial advantage by insulating the nation from volatile global supply chains.
But, there's a twist, and it's a pretty big one. As we contrast this incredible infrastructure ROI and resource sovereignty, we have to look at the other side of the ledger. This exact same geography gives the U.S. an exceptionally high exposure to extreme weather systems, specifically tornadoes sweeping across the flat plains and massive hurricanes hammering the coasts. This acts as a massive natural disaster tax, requiring huge capital allocations toward climate resiliency and insurance funds just to maintain that power.
Nature gives, but it absolutely takes as well, which leaves us with this final provocative thought to ponder. As we build better infrastructure, stronger ships, and far more advanced communication, can technology ever truly overcome the limits of our geography? Or will the physical map always have the final say? Thank you so much for diving into this explainer with me, and hey, keep questioning the ground beneath your feet.